Obviously, there's another big announcement last week in that AWS, we saw there's going to be a change in leadership. And anytime you switch the person in charge of the $100 billion revenue juggernaut that is Amazon Web Services, you're going to expect some changes. So, Charlie, what do you see there?
Well, so to me, this was noteworthy and significant. Andy Jassy announced, and I guess it's taking place relatively soon, in the next couple of weeks, that Adam Selipsky, horrible names, the current CEO, will be stepping down, and as they're calling him, an AWS lifer by the name of Matt Garman will be stepping
Yes.
into the role. What I do think is interesting about it, though, is that I've been like pretty bullish and supportive of. I thought that AWS has been striking the right pragmatically oriented notes that were very aligned to not just trying to be the first out there with all the hype, like we just talked about, right? All these announcements we just saw, cool, but are these things that are really close to the ground that an enterprise can execute on? Not really. And AWS, I think, has done a good job of doing that. But this is clearly a sign from my perspective that Jassy and AWS in general, or that Amazon in general, has not been happy with their position in this, right? What is notable in this whole conversation is there was nothing really from Anthropic, right? The Anthropic
Mhm.
made which is their big partner, and they made their announcement of Cloud 3 Opus a while back, and it sort of fell flat, right? It was just like another also ran. And so I do think this is clearly a sign that Amazon is concerned they're going to get left behind, and that this is a much more aggressive stance than perhaps, or represents a move towards a more aggressive stance than they have taken in the past. So we'll see how it plays out. We'll see. I'm always a little wary that big leadership changes are necessarily, the big catalyst that people think they are, but they can be. So, we'll and as you said, they're a juggernaut. So we'll see how this one plays out when he takes the helm.
Yeah, the politics of this are interesting because 3 years ago when Andy Jassy was named Amazon CEO, and he had to find a replacement for his job as AWS CEO. So he took Adam Selipsky, who had also been a longtime AWSer, but also at the time was Tableau's CEO, and he said, "Hey, Adam, I need you back. I need you to manage AWS. You've managed sales and marketing here for a long time, so you obviously know the company well." But I feel like the challenge there is that he was there to make sure everything kept running and nothing broke, which he obviously knew how to do. And Amazon has been, Amazon Web Services has been just fine. Obviously, still the number one public cloud in the world. They've seen a bit of growth, some growth issues, but only because IT spend as a whole crashed last year for a variety of reasons. I think that was just a macro trend that even Amazon couldn't avoid. But I think the subtle difference between Adam Selipsky and Matt Garman is that Matt Garman has been more of a product leader at Amazon. He has been a product manager. He has been more involved with directly bringing new concepts to market. And I think that's an important piece of the puzzle that AWS wants to improve at overall. They know that this is going to be a very tough time over the next couple of years in terms of keeping up with customers, whereas honestly the last few years it was just about making sure that storage, networking, compute were available.
Yeah, I mean, I think, in fairness, 3 years ago, we lived in a different world, at least
Oh
they did,
yeah.
right? So I think it is, I don't want to say he was a bad choice. And let's remember, their numbers were up. Their numbers were super solid in their last
Mhm.
reporting cycle. So it's really hard to look at this and go, clearly this was a move that needed to be made. But I think it's indicative of the fact that things are changing super, super fast. As we've talked about, there's this sort of AI halo that is driving cloud revenue, or at least implying that it's driving cloud revenue. I think there's a whole lot on the table. I do think there's no way to discount the fact that over these last 3 years, Microsoft has absolutely seen a surge in their
Mhm.
positioning with the Azure cloud and their relationship with OpenAI. So, I think those are all challenges that are going to have to be dealt with. But I was actually a little bit shocked. I was surprised to see the change.
I was surprised too. And part of the reason is because it's not that Adam Selipsky did a bad job. And I think this shows that although Amazon may not quite have the day zero attitude that it once had, it is still willing to make changes and say, you might be the second best person for the job, but we have a number one choice that we would like to put in place. And that level of aggressiveness, I think, is one that not every big company has. I think Microsoft still has it, obviously bringing Satya Nadella in, what inspired move. You have to be able to shake up your leadership for the right person at the right time, which is what AWS is doing here. And going back, from a topical perspective, again, I hate to say this about Google, but this seems to be an instinct that Google lacks in terms of being able to choose the optimal leader at the right time to run each part of the business. They have some status quo issues, and AWS is showing here that they don't have a status quo issue. And the CEO that they picked to next is obviously a good choice for where that company is right now.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting move, and I think as much as I have been bullish on AWS, to your point, this is probably a more encouraging sign than not. Sometimes I look at things like this, and to me it's a very negative, like, oh, these guys are just changing horses because they're scrambling, and this does not feel like that. This looks like a very precise move to solve or to close a gap that they are seeing emerge, even though they're not in any state of crisis. So I think it's a good thing, but it does speak to just the challenges and the volatility in the space of how tough it is, even for these large companies with massive resources, to keep going.
Mm-hmm.